Okay, this is going to be so exciting, everybody. The title of Hannelore's presentation is How to Paint Sensory and Visionary Experiences in Nature. She's best known for her bold, gestural, colorful abstract paintings in acrylic on canvas that are inspired by nature. In recent years, she has honed her technique into a neo-impressionistic approach reminiscent of quadrillion. We get to learn how she applies her not so evenly applied dots, circles, and marks as they synthesize into a symphony of colors and shapes to create her own authentic style. Yay, Hannelore.
All right, thank you, Wendy. Great, you came up with the title and I applaud you. It's right on. So I've been an artist all my life and always have been curious about my tools that are available to me. I'm also curious about life and studied philosophy when I lived in Munich for 3 years, and which led to a trip in India and Nepal, which was life-changing for me. Later, about more than 20 years later, this brought me to the transformative art program at JFKU in the Bay Area, John F. Kennedy University, where I did my graduate program. And what I practiced there still influences my work today. It's meditative. I engaged in psychology there, art therapy, dream work, ritual, shamanic work, shamanic practices, and meditation. So it's very much influenced how I work today and how I look at life. And there will be more about that in my artist statement, which will come up in between me showing you how I do it. So cool. I prepared this canvas and I gave myself rough outlines with chalk. And what you see green here is actually adhesive stencil to keep the whites, the really sharp whites. It's going to be a waterfall. It's Lower Falls from a recent trip to Yosemite. And I've painted Lower Falls before, but in very different forms. So this is my third one, and I'm excited about it. And the feeling I had when I got there was one of generous nature, just an abundance of water, spring water, the snow melt, and joyous feeling. So I want to bring that into this painting. So I need to think about what palette to use. And I pre-mix my acrylic paint with clear acrylic medium. And I've noodled it around, and found that if I mix it that way to a smooth consistency, it dries the way I want to. When I apply my marks, they dry first on the outside, and then I wipe the rest and get these hollow little marks that I build into a tapestry of paint, blurs it together and reads it as one color. And what I'm going to do right now is mix up a faint, very light yellow, a green, and a blue, and a purple. So I'm going to add, these are all the same consistency, some need to be stirred. First drop. You can see how thin it is. Anyway, I'm gonna turn this into a very light yellow. And this patch is the sky, so I also wanted to wait and see what I want to do with the sky. So, I need a rock color. And I only use a little bit at a time because I keep mixing throughout the process, whatever color I feel I need. Spill some might feel no big deal. You will see that the whole process is kind of splashy and wild. I'm not gonna get too wild because I don't want to color your shoes. So intuitively, I'm mixing colors right now. I don't usually go right away with the natural colors like a light gray, dark gray of the rock or the granite, or the green of the trees. Sometimes my trees are purple or red. And the sky gets pink or whatever, yellow. So I feel it out, but in this waterfall image, I also very much was in tune with the flow, with the runoff. This picture was taken from the bridge at Lower Falls. And you see the color of the water changes into a golden green. So I also mixed a golden green. And I want that to be pretty prominent in the foreground.
And those are all the fluid golden paint?
These are not fluid acrylics. These are acrylics as you get it from the tub or from your tube, mixed with clear medium.
Okay.
So I also use fluid acrylics, which I may dilute or not, to if I need to darken a whole area that already has like 3 colors on it, I apply a thin layer of fluids to pull it all together, or to darken it, or to change the hue so it harmonizes. Because it's important to harmonize the entire canvas.
So you mix the medium with the regular acrylic? Are you doing half and half? Half medium? half
Pretty
acrylic?
much, yeah, also water. There's also water. Yeah. It depends what it acts like and looks like on the canvas. Then if I
But you want it
change-
very liquid, is what you're saying.
Yeah. So first, I'm going to use a thin brush and do outlines with this grayish blue I just mixed up. I'm going to do the entire image.
Speak up a little, Hannelore.
Okay. So I gave myself chalk marks so I can be really free with my sketching here. And not look and hesitate, but to really just let it rip here. Not too careful. I do need right away, paint the sides as well. I started doing that about a year ago because it seems to be the common consensus that the sides should be painted, but that's not the only reason. kind of gives a more continuous image. I used to do black sides, and I still do that for my abstract work because it's just too hard to replicate everything after the fact. But normally with landscapes at that size, it works. There are a couple trees. In the foreground, and I shortened them a little bit because I wanted to make the water flow runoff bigger. All these beautiful rocks in there. And that's gonna be tricky. So this is kind of a difficult subject matter to pull off with little dots, but we'll see what happens. Same as people, the faces there, they're like hard to do sometimes with circles and stuff too. But when I, do figurative work, I don't paint portraits normally. I have done one in that technique and it worked out just fine. But for example, the powwow dancers, I've done several of them. I didn't want to do a portrait of a certain individual, but rather the essence of the dance. So it wasn't important to keep the features correctly. So like I do sometimes with outlines of like half dome, I want that to be right. So I have quite a lot of freedom in that. So keep sketching loosely. And I drag the brush sometimes, from here to there, and then that. So I get a really varied thickness of line. A lot of it seems to be about variation in my technique and chance. Or coincidence or synchronicity, if you will.
Did you spray hands your chalk when you
Freehand.
yeah.
Sometimes I make a grid, especially in larger paintings, like I did with the bird. I translated, I'll show it more later. I translated that into a grid first.
Yeah.
How you do it.
You
do
want the
like
proportions to be right.
5 blocks this way and 4 up, and then you translate it into a bigger block on your canvas, but the same amount of blocks.
We have a question about what kind of brush you are using. What size brush are you using?
I do not know the size, but I have a wide range of sizes. Between this and this, I also use a sumi sometimes because it has a flexible tip. I love to use this fan brush for stippling, and a really, really well abused brush that is just perfect for quick strokes. So
But it looks like you're using a small round brush to do the outlining.
small, round, long-haired brush for the outline.
Thank you.
It has a name, but I can't think of it right now. It might be called a liner brush. Make lines with. A little more, we're almost done here. And at this point, when I'm looking at it without glancing at my photograph, I really don't know what all this is. It seems quite abstract to me. Once I add darks and lights, it will make more sense.
You get to paint every day now, Laura.
No,
No, like most of us.
yeah,
Life moves in for
Right.
one's dream.
happens, but sometimes I have pretty good runs where I can do a
Good
week
for you.
in the studio. And then, you have to go somewhere or travel or whatever comes up, family, helping out with the grandkids and whatnot. So I'm gonna do this side view.
Is your studio in your house?
No, it's next to my house, about 50 feet away,
No.
which is very nice. Yeah, very convenient. So I'm gonna let this dry for a moment. And I'm working quickly because I want it to dry fairly evenly. So I get the same reduction throughout the canvas. Oh, I forgot something, just alongside the waterfall. So while this is going on, while this is drying a little bit, and I keep an eye on it. I will tell you what my technique is not.
Could you, is it possible at this point to turn the painting up towards the camera a little bit for people?
Sure. That work?
That works, yeah.
Good. Okay, just to narrow things down a little bit. My technique is not fast, nor is it,
Speak up again, Hannelore.
my technique is not fast, nor is it efficient or precise or predictable. So why? It's a slow process of building up paint gradually through many layers. I rarely finish a painting in one day. I hold on to the mood of my initial experience and sustain that through the days or a week or weeks that it takes to finish the painting. Through several painting sessions. It helps to look at a photograph or a sketch to remind me of what was going on out there in nature. It's not efficient. By taking some of the paint away for a certain effect, it takes longer to reach saturation, like as if I would just fill in a solid color somewhere. It's not precise. Shapes made of hollow circles that overlap create an irregular texture, similar to pointillism, but not quite the same. My application methods are highly accidental and rely on chance. And that's the fun of it, really. And it's not predictable. Each painting creates new challenges. Shapes and colors made of several components can sometimes create unexpected results. And while in the process, I make sure I get enough darks just to begin with. That will be my next step. So I can add light and adjust the value. I play with value and color contrast and the overall luminous appearance. So I'm gonna, especially with this one, attempt to bring luminosity into this beautiful scene. It just looks so festive to me. So now it's time to wipe.
Can you speak up a little bit? Now, what is it time to do?
It's time to wipe and get the chalk off.
So you're removing the chalk with the sponge?
Yes, with
Water, yeah.
with together with the paint that is not dry yet. So I already get these hollow little things. The outlines are mostly gonna go away, but I will probably integrate some of the accidental shapes it made into the painting. And I'm not gonna finish this painting today. Obviously, but I'll get as far as possible. Just to show you different stages. And I also made a presentation with sequences of the painting process for about 7 or 8 different paintings. And show these at the next stage when the second application is drying.
Well, if you did take the chalk off, wash it off, couldn't you just cover it with the acrylic? The chalk, if you did
chalk?
wipe it off, couldn't you just
No,
cover it
because
with
you
the
kind of
acrylic?
paint transparent.
It will come off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will.
It will lift.
The paint will lift if it's in
The paint, yeah, that's what
all over the chalk.
I see.
Okay. Some lines are hollow. And now I'm gonna pat it. And in between each layer, I apply clear medium.
Can you say that again a little louder, please?
In between each layer, I apply clear acrylic medium, which helps set the paint so I don't wipe it off next time. So I don't wipe my underneath layer.
Did you come up with all of this through your own experience?
Yes, yeah, and it's been in the process for about 10, 20 years.
Okay, the question was, did she come up with this process herself? And Hannelore just said that it takes, she's done this she's developed her process over 20 years.
And you definitely have a style.
Yeah.
And I've always,
Yeah.
like, I stood in the gallery over like this close. I'm like, how do you do that?
Okay, here goes the first.
So that's medium that you're putting on.
Yeah, it's just clear medium. It looks milky, but it dries clear. And that's also thinned with water because when it comes out of the pot, and I use a gallon at least a year, it's thicker.
And what kind of medium is that?
Clear acrylic gloss medium.
Is that golden or Liquitex?
That is Utrecht.
Okay, Utrecht.
Big Flick actually bought Utrecht some time ago. And I get it from them. It's high quality and it's more inexpensive than golden. I've tried golden also, but I like this one just fine. Then also brushing the sides to seal in my marks.
Does that dry similar to acrylic paint, like in a few minutes?
Then I will set it outside into the sun. Speeds up a little.
Hopefully we have sun out there.
Yeah, it's an overcast day. So. Last one. Okay,
Can you turn that around and show it to the camera?
Glossy.
and it goes outside.
A little sun.
Well, it's not the sun, the wind will hit it and help dry. So
You ever
now
get
we-
chunks? Like-
Yeah, I get leaves.
Yeah, right.
That
That makes just a
You
little
know,
extra
and-
texture.
Actually, after each round, let's say, I feel it with my hands.
Yeah.
And if there are any lumps and bumps or, rough areas, I take a very light, very fine sandpaper. And just quickly sand it down. This is 220. And this is 400. So I don't want to rough it up, but I do want it smooth. And I forgot to say that how I prep my canvas, I use plaster with acrylic clear medium. So I want to cover up the weave, the canvas weave, because I found through experience that sometimes it interferes with my own weaving of paint. So I don't want to have both. So I do 3 applications and I sand it down and make it really smooth. Yeah.
So why do you use plaster and acrylic medium rather than using gesso?
Gesso is not chalky enough. The plaster fills the holes better, the weave.
Have you tried using wood board instead of canvas?
I do it board sometimes.
Because it's really smooth. Or.
It is,
gesso board,
yeah.
you know.
Sure, but I kind of like the bounciness of the canvas. It feels good to me.
Oh, so you're talking about, excuse me for interrupting, but plaster, pre-made plaster in a plastic thing, you just take a scoop of that and you put it on lightly or. a
She has
light-
No, I pre-mix it.
Okay, you mix it with acrylic.
Yeah, the clear medium is like a glue. So,
Uh-huh.
and it's a thin application,
Okay.
3 thin applications
okay.
with sanding in between.
Okay, interesting.
So we can go to the slideshow now.
Do you ever use, I'm not a painter, I'm not sure what it's called, like clay board?
Yeah,
really- okay.
clayboard's fantastic,
Okay.
but it doesn't come in the sizes I want, so it works small
Mhm.
and also medium and also large, but this large for this technique. If it gets any larger, my abstract work used to be 8 feet. And the next step for me is to translate all this into larger marks.
Yeah.
I started out that's how it developed actually, but this technique is more suitable for small to medium format because it takes so
I should
long.
get out of the way.
So this is
You're not aware.
compilation of
I can-
my artist statement.
Hmm.
And also some sequences. So if you want to go, I call it abstract land and landscape painting with a vision. And the next one
Oops,
shows
This-
half dome as an example. I have it also here.
Oh, great.
Yes.
This is one of the first landscapes I did after moving here in.
Can you show that
2007.
again, please? I had to stop the share so that they could see it in person.
I'm sorry.
No, you're not sorry. Nothing to be sorry for.
What size is that canvas?
Oh, that's 24 by 30.
Hmm.
Beautiful.
Notice how different the blues are. I never can get a blue to come out to the blue that I have. It turns violet or light blue or favorite
Yeah.
color.
You
But-
see, I took great freedom in with the rock and the shade of the mountain. I hiked up to Yosemite
Okay,
Falls
you can put the cans down.
and saw this deep blue on Half Dome. I thought, oh, this is nice. I need to, I don't know, try and paint this. So I exaggerated more, became more abstract, and I put this lazy, not lazy, texture on the rocks. And it felt good and with a vivid sky.
Can you speak up a little bit? You put what kind of texture on rocks?
Lacy,
Lacy.
like lace.
Like lacy, thank you.
She said lazy. Well, she said not lazy. She said
Not
lazy.
lazy.
I caught it.
So next slide. Artist statement, and I put it into bullet form just to make it easier to go through this whole thing. Click on the
Yeah, just a minute, I'm sorry. Okay, okay.
So like Wendy said, my paintings are inspired and conceived by my sensory and visionary experiences in nature. When I bring my fresh impressions into the studio, I aim to be present in the moment, silent and receptive to let my inspiration tell me how to best translate my vision into form. I work with acrylic paint, acrylic fluid paints, and acrylic clear paint medium on canvas to bring this about. I begin by sketching the composition with loose brush strokes, like you just seen. Then I apply spray, dab, stipple dots, and circles. My marks gradually become smaller and denser with each layer. This reductive method of wiping some of the paint away before it is dry creates outlines of my brush marks, which I keep non-uniform for freshness and aliveness. I use vivid colors side by side to create complex hues and compel the eye to blur the image together, similar to pointillism. My method of stippling and reductive wiping results in a semi-translucent tapestry of paint, where edges blur and previous layers are partially revealed. So you actually get a 3D effect almost. This weaving of layers, marks, and shapes echoes what I know about the world, that everything is made up of small energetically charged particles, quantum physics, that everything is interconnected, empty in nature, and in constant flux. So with my painting process, I attempt to replicate that understanding, which is a tall order, but very intriguing to me. When my vision takes form, the illusionary and real come together in imaginary space. And now we go on to examples, and I'm going to walk you through the half dome with prayer flags, which I brought. This began as a demo at the
Okay, I'm gonna stop the share so that they can see that. Hold it up closer to the camera here. Okay.
This began as a demo piece at the Gateway Art Center. And I decided beforehand, I wanted to add prayer flags. It came out of nowhere, you know, because of the revered half dome needed prayer flags. So I sketched it up, did a composite in Photoshop. Looked up prayer flags online, you know, used a photo
You even have the writing on them. I love it.
Yeah. So this was my photo to look at on my iPad, and then next slide. The first step. Next slide.
Well, I just want to give them a little
Okay.
minute so that they can see how you're going from the photo composite to your canvas.
Yeah.
And have you chalked underneath this before you did this? Is this a step where you've already wiped out the chalk marks?
I don't think I used chalk in this one. I just went for it.
You just went for it
Yeah.
then? No chalk,
No
okay.
chalk. And now I'm filling in the basic shapes of the mountain and the sky. And
Okay, and what colors are you using here?
for the current one,
No, for this, on this piece, what colors are you using?
I use purple and blue so far.
Thank you.
So is it the same purple and you just, lightened it for the sky and the mountain?
Yes,
So it's all one
color.
purple
yeah.
that you alter.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Here I added more colors and foreground, the trees. You can see my marks are pretty large still. And the holes are big. So next one. And you can see the paint pots next to it. My little trays are so handy. So I cut a stencil out of transparent paper, you know, and affixed it with these rolled up little tape rolls. Just to not get a totally sharp edge, but a definite edge. That's a way to use stencil. It's a way for me to not have everything go into an unidentified field of little marks. So I make boundaries with this. And here you see the skies more vivid now. The flags have more color. And I keep going with more stippling. The foreground is still rough. The flags are having more folds and things. No writing on it, that's not needed.
Hannelore, on your previous slide, do you do it with a toothbrush or do you do it with your brush and kind of like just hit it with the side of your hand and then it just sort of sprinkles all over the place?
I used approximately first a little thicker.
Okay, hang on a minute.
Didn't mean to interrupt, I'm just wondering.
I want to follow up on the question, because
Yeah,
how did it change from the one to the next? That's fascinating.
actually, first I use this
Oh, there you
for
go.
this
Okay.
gesture. Then I use a thicker round brush with a tip to dot, and it's a vertical motion like this. And then I stipple like this.
Okay.
Smaller.
You are a very, very patient person.
It didn't come easy.
It's a meditative process.
Yeah.
Right,
It is
yeah.
a very meditative process, especially if you work on larger areas.
Oh, yeah.
And
You see the difference between the prior one and this one?
yeah,
Fascinating.
so here more definition in the mountain and the foliage in front.
You go from dark to light.
Mhm.
Is that generally how you work? You lay dark down first?
It works a lot of times. Yeah, I don't always do it, but it gives me kind of a head start because
Yeah.
it looks different somehow if I add dark lines later.
Yes,
And then I have to go over it again with light but sometimes I feel I need to darken an area and I do that.
so the half tone was in that dark purple, and now we have lots of detail in the white on top of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's painted on, that's not stippled, right?
Yeah, I use these long brushes. It's just very much like I start out with sketching, if there is a ravine, I need to have a vertical movement, I put that in, I make longer marks. So sometimes my marks are directional,
So it's a combination
For
of
that
different approaches to
Oh, yeah.
achieve that.
different mark making. Okay. So we've seen that progression and here's the final piece.
So the distinction here is that you've got detail in the lower foreground now.
Yeah, much more. And I saved that for last and the final touch-ups on the flags.
It's fascinating.
Very.
So now I want to stop here and see.
Oh, yeah. We have to.
And we have fun.
Came out just for you. I said the sunshine came out
Yeah,
just for her.
Yeah, it's dry, so
Can we show them the canvas?
It looks the same
it
as.
still looks the same.
It's just dry.
Except it's not shiny wet anymore, it's flat, but it has little bumps, so I'm gonna use a little sandpaper.
You mentioned in the beginning about adhesive strips. Is that what that was called? The green thing that's called just adhesive strips? Adhesive tape?
Not sure, I've had this for a while, I think it's really a shelf paper, a shelf liner, self-adhesive.
Oh.
But you can also buy it. In a craft store, comes in sheets like this.
You don't have to open it just for me. Now that I know you use
Yeah,
shelf liner.
it's interesting. You can peel off the back. It's semi-translucent. So I don't know if you see
Uh-huh.
the paint through it. And, with a marker, you make outlines, like if I could do any shape now and then peel it off and glue it on, and it will stay long enough for me to do my color application twice or even 3 times.
And I wonder if it would rip paper if you used it on paper like a watercolor.
I've
paper.
used regular paper, I've used butcher paper, I've used cardboard. Sometimes just lay down a T-shirt as a color block. It doesn't have to be exact. If I want it to be exact, I use this.
No, what I'm saying is if you use that, for example, not on canvas, but on paper, like a watercolor paper, and if you pulled it up, would it take the paper, some of the
Yeah,
paper
I
off?
would.
Oh, okay.
The adhesive is probably too strong.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you cover up what you don't want to paint, with like tracing paper,
Yeah, do that.
Say that again?
you could cover up the spaces you don't want to paint with something else other than the adhesive tape, like tracing paper.
Yeah. Yeah, like you've seen at the hot dog with the prayer flag. It is tracing paper and then adhered it with tape pieces.
If you really want it to go through the paper. If the paper is supposed to protect that part of the canvas that says white space, or something, that would be the thing you have to experiment with.
Right. And the colors are tape. More like post-it, that
Yeah.
you use on paper.
Right.
Sufficiently smooth now. Now, the very important task of putting in darks. So the darkest areas are definitely over here to the left of the waterfall. And then the rocks, some rocks in the trees, deep shades. So they also, when I put in a darker color now, it's serves as a landmark for me to orient myself on the painting. And for that purpose, I'm gonna use this brush. It's it has a nice tip. Little wiggly. So I really can easily get into shape. But this paint is too thick, so I'm gonna add a little bit of water. Okay, right up here.
Now, as she's putting in the darks, she's referring to her iPad image
Right.
to give her some guidance. The iPad is just out of view a little bit. So I just wanted to point out that that's what she's looking at over to her right. The iPad is actually sitting behind the water bucket.
On the side.
Hannelore, is it the same blue you used for the outlines?
Yeah, I thinned it a little bit.
The question was, is that the same blue that you were using for your outlining?
Yes, and I added water to it. I made it thinner. And right now I make a gradation for the mist. Thinking ahead to the water mist. So I go over in some places to create a thicker puddle, so it dries unevenly. Even splash on a little bit, get more marks. And there's more. Sorry. What darker. I just dabbed it because it got too thick and too wet. When it dries, it will just come off the entire, let's just leave a little outline. And I don't want it to all come off. So I dabbed a little bit.
Does that kind of add more texture as well?
Yes, it does. Mhm. Okay. So now.
Is that
The coffee maker is so loud.
we probably should.
Oh, that's,
What was that? It's just making all this noise out there. No, that's a present.
Just pour out the coffee, pour out the drink.
Well, after this is over, we don't have to leave right away.
True.
And we
So
have a
we can,
microwave.
go out in the other room and you can have coffee and what other little snacks that Gina has brought for us and other
Everybody
people.
brought snacks. We have
Everybody
all
brought
sorts of stuff.
snacks. So, and Hannelore will be here. You could ask her questions out there. So we can have a little social time after her demo. So don't feel like when her demo's done, we've got to run off.
Good.
And the people on Zoom, you can have snacks yourself.
There you go.
They're probably eating now.
Right.
The ones that have just their names, not.
Yeah, not a picture of. And towards the end of her demo, I will ask everyone to unmute so you can ask questions if you're on Zoom of Hannelore. We've had a couple pop up in chat, but actually right now it would be better if you save your chat questions because then I have to pop off and look at the chat. So let's save those till the end of her demo, and you can either chat questions, you can raise your hand, you can use the reaction button to raise your hand, and we'll get her to answer questions for you.
all right. What I just did, I mixed another color
Yeah.
for rocks, which is basically red. I used some of the blue. I also used brown and I used red and pale yellow. So I want this to be next to the waterfall.
And why did you choose this red?
Just to have a nice contrast between the rocks that come forward at you and the ones that recede. So I will add the same red after this dark dries to the dark. Kind of.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's a tree. I don't want to do the tree just yet. Just the rock.
And you notice she didn't hesitate to just take her hand and wipe out that paint.
We're not too fussy at this point. Still a really rough stage.
Hannelore, have you tried using oil paint to do this sort of thing?
It wouldn't work with oil. I've worked in oil before. I didn't like it much. I'm too impatient. So I switched to acrylics, but I think oil is beautiful. But not for this purpose. I think it's too soft and mushy.
I like oil. But I don't think I could do this at all with oil
Yeah.
paint.
Well, you've also got a real drying time issue
Yeah.
Right,
because she's using multiple layers
yes.
and she's going to put clear on between the layers.
Right.
So that would be very difficult to do with oil because of the drying time.
Patience is relative.
Yes, patience is relative, as Wendy said.
So. Taking on shape. All the way up to the sky. And some in between the trees. This rock's showing through. Yeah.
Do you use transparent oils, Barbara?
No. Well, sometimes, because I mix with them,
Yeah,
but I try to use opaque most of the time.
because there's an artist named Kate Brakey. I don't know if you've heard her name. She takes photographs and then alters them with transparent oils.
What are you doing there, Hannelore?
I made a mistake and I'm wiping it off. Which is very easy to do because it's sealed with clear medium, which makes it even smoother. So this is actually part of the light, the white water coming down. And I'm gonna deal with this separately later. So right now, it's just important that the basic medium rock color goes in there. And angular, so I adjust my brush strokes to the angular rocks. And it's not precise, I'm just roughly following my prop, you know.
Sorry.
And I just want to point out that this demo will take however long it takes. It may run a little bit longer. If we need to take a break, we may do so, but we're going to let Hannelore go as long as she wants.
No, I
With her
can go.
No, I'm just saying. And so, no, that's fine. I don't
Yeah.
want us to feel like we're
I'm
constrained.
really
on
interested in
time.
watching the process.
Yes,
Good, good.
but I'm letting the people on Zoom know that as well.
And it's recorded. So.
It is being recorded, but we're just gonna let it go as long as it seems appropriate.
Okay.
We're not gonna cut her off.
Fine.
But since people may get hungry after she finishes this stage, we may take a short break. So the people here can go out and have some snacks and coffee or whatever, and then we'll come back.
That's good timing because I need drying time again.
Yes. And so what we'll probably do for those folks on Zoom is we'll just leave the Zoom channel open but I'll pause the recording.
Okay, so this is what we have so far.
And you
Until
can see how
computer
wet the
will
surface is.
run. Yeah, it will run. I don't want runs, but it's not terrible if that happens. So the green will be the white waterfall. I'm keeping that safe for now. And I'm gonna put it back outside and I'll be right back.
Okay, so I think this is a good time for us to take a little break.
Yep.
And so I will just pause.
You got
You don't mind if I just come up and look a little more closely, do
Oh,
you?
please do.
Why
I
don't you
just-
explain to Barbara what you're doing,
Yeah.
Hannelore?
I just brought it in and I noticed, oh, I let it go almost too long. But I could still wipe some areas and I got more whites back, which is nice at this stage. And now I'm glazing it again with clear medium. And that needs to dry and then we do stippling.
So up close, I get to see all the distinctions that you've got. You can still see your outlines underneath. Some of it is translucent and some of it is more opaque.
Yeah, because I use thick and thin brush, paint on my brush. Different motions,
You've certainly done a lot of good work
varied it,
with the new paintings.
and now it can go back out in the sunshine and it'll be dry in a little while.
So your process is you apply the paint, you let it dry for a bit, and then you wipe in
Wipe,
order to
wash it.
pull up some of the paint, but not all of it.
Yeah,
And once you've wiped it, then you put another layer of clear on top of it,
Yeah.
and that's glazing.
exactly.
Can you show it to the camera before you take it outside?
Go.
Thank you.
Oh, there it is. Giving everybody a card. That's great.
Very, you have so inspired me with your prayer flags. I have 2 or 3 different kinds. I'm going to use them in my next piece.
Yeah. And I want to do more imaginary themes.
Yes, yes, yes.
Like combinations. That's
But my show
interesting.
will have a lot of imaginary stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, we're taking somebody who lived almost 1,000 years ago. How did they know what we'd be dealing with today? How did she know that? So that's what I'm doing.
I loved your piece in the portrait show, Visions of Self, where you go up the stairs.
Oh, I like that one too.
Yeah.
I would have had it in this
That
show.
view. Very intriguing.
No, I wasn't allowed to put, I totally forgot. Wasn't allowed to put it in because it had been in another show.
Yeah.
Okay, Hannelore, do you want to go to the screen share now?
Yes.
This is so good.
So next image up, I put 2 paintings here. It's 3 women hiking, the lower one. It's a COVID piece, and the upper one is 3 women walking, inspired by a powwow I went to in Mariposa. And it's not a real scene. I took the 3 women that I was intrigued with in a different background. They're walking through a field of grass, and they have their spirit guides above them in form of birds. Each has a different bird, as a kestrel, a hawk, and an eagle. And then the way they were walking, then COVID comes around, and I'm hiking with friends, and we're spaced apart. So,
Did you
so I
get them all
thought,
on the same
okay,
foot?
it's a nice,
Yeah,
a
you
nice,
got them all on the same foot. I love it. You
yeah,
guys were walking together.
yes, a nice contrast and a lot of similarities
Yeah,
still.
for sure.
Walking through a beautiful landscape. And here I'm starting from dark and working because I thought of the road. I thought this would be insane if I have to put little dark specks in between every single pebble. So I started dark just to make it easier with lighter marks. And
Can you talk about the horizontal lines and the vertical lines in this, at this step? Can you explain those?
that's left over from my chalk, from my transfer from a smaller sketch. And I don't know why it has so many little lines, I don't remember. But you can see the larger grid. It's about on the right person. It's about from her waist to the head. That was the size of my grid. And then it goes away with the next application, and I make the figures even darker to add the light clothing later. And next. And the pink you see here, they're stencils. So I'm covering them up. So I have real freedom to splash on the road, to apply a lot of wild splashes and stipples and dribbles and dabs, and also some shadow. And then the stencil comes off. Landscape is more refined. Road is more refined, more detail, and then the final 3 women walking.
Very cool. I like seeing the process.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
me too.
All right. And another one. soaring high. So this is, well, I don't have to show it to
No, you can
everyone.
show it. We can stop, do a screen share.
Okay,
How vivid the sky is in this season.
yeah. So this was a very special experience I had in Pinnacles National Park, where I went twice this March, in early March and in late March. And in the first visit, I was fortunate enough to actually see the birds up close.
Yeah.
And I came to about 6 feet. There was a big condor sitting on a rock when I walked up to the high peaks early in the morning. I was told by a hiker that they wait for the warm updraft to come up, and as soon as
Yeah.
it's right, the conditions are right, they start flying and soaring, and they did, and there were so many,
Oh,
and it went on for about 50 minutes, and then they dispersed. So me not being a very good photographer, not very quick, I had my hands full to just trying to snap a few pictures because they were so fast.
Is that your bird on the left?
Yeah, it was
That's
both of
beautiful.
my
That's
images, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's before they started flying.
Yeah.
huh? And they let you
And
that close?
yeah, they let me, they weren't disturbed at all by my presence. They just did their thing. And then vultures came and joined them.
yeah, I wanted to ask you, because that one has a red head.
Yes,
For vultures, that means they're youth. They're like within their first 8 months.
I mean, for condors, it means age.
I see. Oh,
They have red heads when they mature. Orangey, yellow, red.
So the fellow on the left is an immature.
I would think so. I'm not that good at identifying them, so I
books
just
would
got
tell
to
us.
know them, and I looked up facts about them. They soar up to 15,000 feet high. That's why I chose an aerial view inspired by the park brochure and let them soar even higher above. This is the beginning. And then more definition in the high peaks, in the mountains. And again, the color is exaggerated. They're not that orange, but they are a red rock. And the sea of clouds underneath. And then I'm covering up the mountain with a stencil to be free to work on the sky. A lot of splashing and stippling.
Okay, and so by covering up the rocks, you're keeping the splashing and everything from getting on them, correct?
Yes, because I want a different color variation on the rocks than on the sky. So in reverse, I cover up the sky partially. And the rest was covered with a t-shirt or some rag. And give the mountain more definition. And here
Look at that.
it looks more like peaks, but they don't have my clouds yet.
Right?
So, but the sky is vivid.
No, go ahead and show that again. They don't have your cloud rings yet, right?
Yeah, yeah. And the aerial flow is there. I wanted to show that, you know, to give the feeling of updraft,
The visual texture.
even
is
at
so
great
amazing.
height. So here's an image of me stippling off my fingers. So I load the brush and then just do this motion.
Hang on a minute.
As
Show
you
us the
can
motion.
see,
Yeah.
load the brush. Go all over the painting. And I also put a stencil on it, so that was necessary for some stipple marks, but not for actually painting the bird, because it got a little messy. This was just butcher paper. It wasn't adhesive, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted to. But it's easy to correct with acrylics because they're opaque. They can be as opaque as you want them to be.
Oh, and because you did a stencil,
Yeah,
it wasn't difficult to lay in the color where you wanted it and create your line.
yeah. But when I took it off, it got a little messy. So next.
I like the effect of the t-shirt the best. I'm drawn to that.
And the plastic underneath.
Yeah.
So more of the bird and keep going.
And you started your clouds around the pentacles.
Yeah.
Yeah. The birds, the feathers have more definition. They have really long fingers, they call them, to help them soar. But something didn't feel right with the sky, and then I had to let it sit for a while, a week or so, and then envision it with a really intense blue sky, a darker sky, and that worked for me.
Yeah, very nice.
It was a much better
dramatic.
composition, more balanced with this heavy rock.
And yet the underneath work still shows through so that you get the sense of air movement.
Yes, exactly. Okay, next is High Sierra Pool. That looks like a watercolor sketch, the first sketching in. And then next one. More color, there was this really yellowish glow to it. And I loved that and incorporated it into the water where it's shallower. There's a detail close up. And the next one is the entire painting. That's the
Wow.
final painting.
Really love the high contrast and the values that you added.
Yeah, lots of rock definition. Shawl dancer. This is inspired by the Mariposa powwow, and I took pictures with sort of permission, And then I took the background off my favorite one in Photoshop, and it became really clear how high she was stepping, and she was almost taking off. So the following 3 or 4 images are details of the final. It's not a sequence. Here you see the variation of my brush strokes, of my marks, from dots to long lines and it's very much alive and in motion. This is the final piece.
I like the gradation from the light at the top to the dark at the bottom. It grounds her.
Yeah,
Have you ever been able to find, like, the person you painted and show
pardon me?
her? Have you ever been able to find that dancer and show her your painting?
No, haven't tried.
Is it forbidden to take photos when they're doing that dancing?
No.
I understand you're supposed to ask them first, but there wasn't really a protocol in place to
Okay.
do that, so.
Right, and I mean, how would you know that is that person?
And I didn't show her face, so I
Yeah.
think that was the crucial.
Well, it's a public
Component.
exhibition too. I'm sure they have an expectation.
Yeah.
They do have.
Okay, here's something different, my variations of half domes I've painted over a few years. There are more, but they didn't fit on the page. Farewell to Spring, I started dark and in this really contrasting hue to the light pink to get all the grasses. I was almost as much fascinated by the grasses and stems as with the flower.
And by the way, the Farewell to Spring is the name of the flower.
It's a
Clarkia.
Clarkia.
Yeah.
Blooming right now, everywhere.
Now,
Yeah, they're so pretty. Blue bison, I wanted to do an icon of a bison, an archetype. So to make it less lifelike, I made it blue. And This is my outline for the stencil. I haven't cut yet. Because I wanted to add a lot of more color to the background. However, because the stencil is so big, a lot of paint gets lost and gets wiped. But it did add movement and color to the background and help the composition. And then I applied all around the bison a shimmery color, metallic. Sometimes I use metallics, but not often. I did on the farewell flower heads. And when you look at it, here it is.
Oh,
Yes, and as you turn it, it takes on different color.
So after you laid your stipple on the background, you then put a coating of the metallic on top of it?
Yeah.
So we still see the stipple come through.
Outlining, yes. Yeah.
But it's neat because certain ways it looks like it isn't there and then you turn it and you see it.
Oh, yeah.
But there's
Oh, it's so
the
different.
clear matte medium over it, so it seals it from the other layer, right?
So from far away, it had this green sheen to it that was metallic, but up close, it's got all the color of the stipple.
I'm gonna check on my painting on this.
And what's really interesting is because she wiped it, she had the imprint of circles without color in the center.
I see, you're right. And if you get close, you don't see the little
So that's
detail.
why the timing of when to wipe it is important.
Yeah, very important.
Very cool. Because it's typically right into the blue bicep. Yeah.
Not heavily, only when you have a couple of them.
Very cool.
All right, onward with stippling and flashing.
Excuse me.
You worried about the camera?
No, I'm not worried about the camera. I just, the table or something is moved and I wanted to be. Oh, there's a question from Carla wanting to know, when you did farewell, did you mask out the flowers, or please speak a little more to that? And I'll just go back to the picture.
It's a small painting, so I didn't go through the trouble of making that many masks. Just painted it on.
Let me just go back to really quickly that image, so. Okay, there we are. What size is the painting?
I think it's 9 by 12. Yeah,
Okay,
it's 9 by
yeah,
12.
because on screen it's hard to tell.
Yeah,
And so you didn't mask the flowers, you just painted them directly.
I just painted them directly.
But first, there's the background, then they're white. And then you added the color.
Yeah, I put the white down because my paint is semi-translucent.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure I get a clean pink.
That's nice, and that background.
I think it's so charming.
Yeah.
I really like it. It's adorable.
Time consuming. Getting all those individual flowers on top of that.
But meditative, as we said.
So there was a question about the metallic paint.
Yeah, what's the
Is the
question?
metallic paint permanent? Does it fade over
Oh,
time?
okay.
Oh, no, it's like the other acrylics. It's the same. It's made the same way. It won't fade ever.
Okay.
It's plastic, really.
Oh.
So it's dry to the touch right now?
It's dry and I sanded it a little bit and I'm ready to add more marks. So what I'm gonna do is go with purple. And pull these two together, the red and the blue. I'm gonna use this trusty funky old brush.
And again, why are you going to use purple? Can you explain why you're using the purple again?
To pull the blue and the red together. So there's some red in the blue and blue in the red. Anyway, that's how it works in my mind. So kind of want to do that on the bigger tarp. Is that
Okay,
okay?
yeah, it's okay. Let me just,
How you gonna get there? That's really long. Oh, I guess that one, yeah.
And I'm gonna do it all over. And the bigger my brush and the thinner the paint maybe, the bigger the marks, the bigger the dot.
she's doing a dance.
Yes, she is.
Doing my dance.
It actually looks a little shamanic.
Kirby, we want to see this again. How do we access?
You'll get an email.
Oh, okay, cool. I don't think I've ever done it, but I like.
No, no,
Will
we-
you keep
we-
posting
we
updates
know how
on the parts you
to
do?
link.
Yeah, I'll post it when it's done.
In a way, say Facebook page.
No, it'll go on the YSA YouTube channel and you will get, a link.
Part she does at home.
oh, yeah, yeah, she can, yeah, yeah.
So you just go until the paint's gone.
So I'm out of paint, I'm adding more water to have a different consistency. And
Wow.
do some directional flashing. And that will dry a little differently and will give me a thinner outline
Mm-hmm.
or even take away from the paint when it puts a different dot with a thicker color. And so it needs to go outside.
But can you show that to the camera before you take it outside?
So it won't.
No, we turn the camera, so you can see it.
Sorry. I don't- I'm watching them, so I have to go have one more thing.
Okay, for coming. Good luck with the show.
Thank you.
And next, I have one more painting to show you, the one that's in the circle gallery right now. The Set River Trail,
Okay,
and then I think we're done unless you want to stay longer, which is fine.
I'll move on to. Yeah, I'm gonna put in. I am inspired. Are you gonna go home and do this, Wendy?
The Set River Trail.
What I'm doing.
So in hiking, I kept seeing these beautiful spring colors, but not all in one frame. So I combined my two photos in Photoshop. Right, next.
Good idea. Oh, nice.
This is how it begins. A little more detail, more in the front. And the splashing for the red buds.
You don't wear gloves, huh? You do it right off your fingers.
Dabbing, I wear gloves when it gets too bad. Normally I forget. straight up and down if I wanted more localized. And here, the sky didn't look right to me, and the river needed more detail. So the next one, the sky all of a sudden is mostly red, and it's competing with the red buds. So again, adding more blue to it, toning it down, and that's the final.
Very nice.
Very nice. And you want a beautiful ribbon for that piece.
Yeah.
Must be
And
nice.
here, my paintings want to engage and evoke a dialogue with the viewer. They invite participation by looking closer, awaken curiosity to look at reality with new eyes, and inspire a mental shift towards openness with their soulful and universal nature.
Wow, very sophisticated.
And if you want to see through this quote by David Bohm, physicist, about perception, it's about perception. It's a circular argument, and I like it. What we take to be true is what we believe. What we believe is based on our perceptions. What we perceive depends on what we look for. What we look for depends on what we think. What we think depends on what we perceive. What we perceive depends on what we believe, and what we believe determines what we take to be true. What we take to be true is our reality.
It's complicated. I didn't
Yeah.
think about that one.
It's circular.
Yeah.
Sort of like the dots and circles in her paintings.
Yeah, very much like that.
And finally, here's my information. That's my website, artsouljourneys.com, and you can see a lot more paintings. You can contact me by email or cell phone. This is my text phone.
Where else do you show your work?
Where?
What other galleries or places do you show your work?
I found one last year in Ennis, Montana. I took up some paintings I made of a Yellowstone and Grand
Oh,
Tetons.
yeah.
And they have 3 of my paintings right now.
Excellent.
I used to be in Phoenix, Arizona, but they closed their doors.
Oh, what a pity.
So currently it's Oakhurst,
Well,
John Bach,
Sierra Artist Gallery in Mariposa.
and the Sierra Artist Gallery Co-op in there.
Uh-huh. Good for you. Good.
Yeah. And shows. I'm in an abstract show right now in Idlewild, Southern California. I just ended. And I've been in online shows, off and on. And there's, of course, Art Trails is coming up.
Okay, and so what we would like to do now before we close is offer the people on Zoom an opportunity to ask any questions, as well as people in the room. And I will repeat the questions to the people in the room because they're behind the camera and the microphone. So do we have any questions? Raise your hand. Laura says, thank you so very much, Hannelore. Absolutely fascinating process, totally inspiring.
Yes.
I agree.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Nice to see everybody on Zoom too. Thanks
Yeah,
for
glad
showing
you
up.
guys could be with us.
Any
and share.
questions from anyone on Zoom?
I already asked all my questions, so.
Okay, if we have no more questions from anybody, Moira, you have to unmute if you want to ask a question. Thank you, Hannelore and Derby. Yes, I'm wearing my Derby. Okay.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, Derby Kirby, for being with us today.
Derby.